I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Yeah, what's up, world? Welcome to I Mix What I Like, right here at I Mix What I Like. I'm Jared Ball. Welcome, everybody. Please like, share, subscribe on your way in. And good to see folks already here. Mantan Moreland. Good shout. Of course, Big Bro knows. Walaikum salam. Good to see you. Good to see you. Everybody, thank you for joining me this afternoon. I'm going to hang out a little bit. Got a couple things and have a little bit of fun, I hope. And in the end, bringing up some old stuff. Peace, 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 peace. Maybe. And folks, just real quick before I forget, tomorrow morning, we got a special remix morning show edition over there on Black Liberation Media. I'm gonna jump on with them and Kamal, Ear Doctor, and Kim for a foundational Black Liberation Media +1 gathering. So definitely tune in tomorrow morning. Tune in tomorrow morning. All right. Oh, you already started the essay. So the essay that you talking about the Mantan Manifesto. It's linked in the show description. I'll be talking a little bit about it in a few minutes. What's up, Poncho? Oh, word. Right on. Nah, man, I'm good. I really think, my beauty is really a challenge for folks sometimes. You know what I mean? I'm good. It is what it is. I can't help it if my father took all his melanin with him. And I don't brown up in the summer anymore. So this is what it is. And I've come to terms with it, but I see folks comment on my complexion regularly. I hope you're all right with yours. Hey, yeah, the one linked in the show description. Right on, right on. And that's the updated version. And folks, by the way, when you click it and you see it show up in academia.edu, the text looks all jumbled, but when you download the PDF, it comes in clear. So don't worry about it. All right. So before I get to it, there's a couple things. Actually, my complexion is going to come up. We are going to talk a little bit about it today. In fact, because I want to. I just saw a video. I want to mention before I get to. And then so here's the rundown. If you want to take notes and follow along, we're gonna start with my SteveCokely story, and then in the F to signifier universe, there's this brother Lil Bill. He put out a video about biraciality. Talk a little bit about that, and then I got a response to my last UmarJohnson criticism. So we're going to revisit some of what one of you sent as a response, and then we'll get to the Tyler Perry thing before we wrap up. So again, welcome everybody. Hope you're having a relatively good afternoon, and yeah, welcome. All right. All right. All right. So I don't know how many people are familiar with SteveCokely, the late SteveCokely. But somebody in so I hope I'm not doing this wrong. So I had asked channel members and patrons what they would, just curious. First of all, to appreciate them, and then feel free to join them, and including the Patreon, you can sign up for free. And in fact, at that QR code right there. So, but I had asked folks like what might you like to see more, just to check in, like what if anything might I do. So somebody, actually a couple people have been requesting the Black film pitch meetings, and I put a test run up, trying out a new setup and a new idea of how to do it, and I put it up on Patreon, and it needs a lot of work. My plan, and the real pitch meeting, which I am a fan of. I like how he does that. And he's even said himself he's stepping back over after so many years because of the amount of time and editing it takes. And obviously, this is not my full-time job or anywhere close to it. So I need a way of doing the editing, uh, writing, shooting, and then editing it in a way that is more practical and more realistic for my time, while trying to hit as many. And it just takes a lot of time. So even that, it's not even a 3-minute video. Took me an entire day to do, and it's not where it needs to be. So whatever I'm doing needs to be changed up. But one of the other requests that I got was to say more about my experience as a student of sorts of the street lectures, the grassroots community lectures of SteveCokely. And for those of us of a certain generation, in a certain Black nationalist political space, he was he had an enormous name and following for somebody who spent time in Chicago politics, working for Harold Washington, and did a little bit of media in the 80s, and but primarily was doing videotaped and audio taped lectures in Black community spaces all around the country. And he used to do a number of them in DC, and what is now the Starbucks, I believe it's still a Starbucks down there near at the Howard University, the upgraded Howard University complex. There used to be the Georgia Cafe, and I used to go there, among other places. But I just remember there was, like, he had a Saturday morning, I think weekly, and these would be hours long lectures, and I always found them fascinating. So, um, yeah, he passed away a few years ago from the conscious community, and as it was, and I thought his lectures were fascinating. They were he was a compelling speaker. I'm gonna play a clip for you here in a second, just one I found that because they're not always easy to find. They're not always easy to find with good quality either, and then they're often also very long. So I just found a little clip so you get some of you at least would get an idea of what I'm talking about. And and I also lost what should have been a comrade a couple of years ago when on this platform I mentioned that um fan isn't the right word. I mean, I didn't always agree with Coakley. I found him, a challenge to deal with. Um, but his lectures were brilliant and they were fascinating. And to someone who was young and didn't know nearly what I know now, and even that is insufficient, it was great. And so I would go, for years, I would see him speak. And when I was in undergrad at Frostburg, I arranged to bring Coakley up there to give a lecture. And and I got to, so and then I often would volunteer to drive. So I got to drive him up and back. So that's, 5, 6 hours in the car. And when he wasn't sleeping, it's a little extra time to just build a little bit. Uh, but he was also, he was just in general not trusting. I was nowhere near his inner circle. And looking back, this is something that'll come up in a little bit again. I've been reassessing. I think over the years, I've not always. It's sometimes not easy to measure how some in certain parts of the Black community will respond to my particular brand of mixture. So I'm not always entirely sure I've always gotten it right in terms of calibrating how I'm being responded to, and sort of in my post midlife crisis moment and reassessing some things. I think I've often misjudged. So I don't know if this was about that, or if this was about just me, or he was just in general not trusting. But I remember, we had been on the road for a few hours, and I asked if I could use his bathroom when I dropped him off. He was like, "Nah, you can't come inside." And I was like, "All right." So which caused a little bit, because you got to go, you can drive around and find, so it's like, but so stuff like that. And then he was a little gruff a little bit, but I actually liked his analysis and I liked his approach. And in those spaces, what I also particularly liked was that he was not sort of the overly narrow nationalist who would just blindly condemn whites and Jews just for the sake of whites and Jews. Like, he was always wanting to connect it to individuals' patterned behavior, demonstrable behavior of individuals and groups involved within groups. So it was I always felt it was a little more nuanced of an analysis than what you might sometimes run into in those spaces. Uh, but his breakdowns of the Black fraternal sorority so-called Greek organizations, and his animosity towards them, his hostility towards them as betrayers of the community, I always thought was fascinating, and just the documents he would show and whatnot. So I'll just play a little bit of this here, and just as an example of what I'm talking about. And
as I can. My goal is to lay before you a certain set of information about the core negativity. My job is to chase the players out the dugout onto the field so you can identify them more clearly. These are the people who we believe harm us the most. There's much discussion about them. The white man, the Jews, the white supremacy. I think that's a very prominent and a very important disease. But the naming of the white supremacist is the moment that we stand in now. The pinning the tail on the donkey.
yeah,
The clarifying just who the boogeyman is, and that's what I get to do. And I'm pleased to have the opportunity. I'm going to
Oh, wow.
Put some things up here on this overhead the best I can. I hope everybody can see it so that I can need to set these in a way everybody can get to it. What time we got? 8:15. All right.
So I wanted to, I started where I did because he shouts him out earlier, but this is the late Dr. Tony Martin. And this is also something that Coakley mentioned in that was also very true. You would be at these lectures and see people like Tony Martin, the Van Sertimas, the Clarks, like they would be in these kinds of space, like there would be this kind of overlap where certain forms of African world scholars and activists would be in these spaces. And so yeah, just this. That's why I started where I started, so you can see Martin sitting in the audience there. And this was a lecture in Boston in 1993, I believe. Yeah,
you can see this. One of the things that we're dealing with is we're dealing with a direct enemy, and we're dealing with symbolism and codes sent by the enemy to distract us from who and what it really is. Now, symbolism is a subtle process by where one swallows something psychologically that they might not understand how it takes away their ability to rationalize their belief system. For example, in Washington, D.C., the mayor of Washington recently got arrested on a Thursday at a demonstration for D.C. statehood. But on Friday, she asked for the National Guard, alleging that she could not control the city. That's a fundamental contradiction that will not have a person listening to you believe that though you want to be a state, you allege it's out of control. That's symbolism. And so maybe she didn't really want statehood, and maybe she does want the National Guard, and the people that she hangs with are to be confused by her behavior so that no one who really means to hit the ball goes up to bat. All right? Now, I'm in Washington, D.C., and I wanted to have a lecture on October 11th. And, of course, everyone would know that October 11th is Columbus Day. Now, you all got to, again, tell me how well you can see this. Let's see here. Let me clarify this up here. And I couldn't get there. This is, of course, just a postal department flyer. And all it says is that that was a federal holiday. And that's a belief system. That's a white belief system. Now, is that true? No, it ain't. We all know it ain't so, but how many people didn't have to work that day? So you're right. You almost put your hand up, sister. You put your hand back down. I got pictures of you being home that day. Okay. Now, if we know it isn't true, then at what point do we stop taking money for it? At what point do the children demand to be educated? Howard University was closed on Columbus Day. So Brother Coakley couldn't give a lecture at one of the most prestigious black universities because on that day they were closed for Columbus. But then it's the District of Columbus, so everybody there was off, right? Now, they came up with a referendum for a state. And in the referendum, they came up with a new name for the 51st state. The old thing is District of Columbus, so they got free. The black people had a referendum, passed a referendum, and now they choose to be called New Columbia. Now, you got free, but now you the new old shit. I'm New Columbus. And so when I got to D.C. and I had a rally with Marion Barry and everybody was up there and they wanted Brother Coakley to speak to it, and I said, y'all don't want to hear me because I don't think you really understand the signal that you're sending to the children where you have absorbed this colonialism activity in a way that you've rationalized it as okay. See, adults can rationalize things they don't believe in. The children get confused. See, you know how you rationalize working for that white man when you really don't want to. But you say, I need the money, and just a little while longer, and if I could only get, you know. And so we stomach these things, but children don't understand that. So the crime of being a Greek when there's no such thing, the impersonating things that we aren't, if for no other reason, recognize that it sows the seeds of inferiority in the children. And if you want the child to grow up and to be strong, quit giving them the confusing signals that makes them be a punk like the adults. Now, never in the history of Columbus Day has anybody ever stood up and gave the money back. Never in its history. I got fired from one job in Chicago for I was chief of staff for a city council alderman. I had an anti-Columbus day. Ivan von Sertima was at the Nation, and I stood up and we had a big anti-Columbus thing, and the minister came and 400-500 people piled in. Well, I lost my job because the Italians at city council could compel my black elected official that I had to be punished for wanting to repudiate Columbus Day. So when she said she was going to demote me and send me to the field office, when I was strong in legislation and should be in the council, I refused to accept the demotion over my values, and I resigned with 2 babies and a little $24,000 a year job and no money in the bank, and I stopped the day after Columbus Day and didn't get paid the day after, because the real test of where you are is, do you stand for the things you say?
So just a little taste. Again, I used to, and would probably, if he was still doing them, would find the lectures today just as fascinating and compelling and informative and funny, and it would be a good time. We would be sitting in there for hours, and it wouldn't even be a problem. Especially when, back in the day when, obviously younger and whatever, but one thing that always was a contradiction for me, and I still struggle with, would be that he would make this point often about being willing to stand on your principle, even if it meant losing a job. But at the same time, he would depend on and be very vocal about his dependency on people in the community with jobs funding his lectures and his work. So at some point, this is part of that trick bag. We can't all do the same, like not everybody can do the things that some people claim of themselves is absolutely necessary. Uh, if and then without there being new formations and agreements, at least. So, but anyway, so I was just asked, and that was my for the most part my SteveCokely story. Uh, And what I think I forgot to finish mention is that I did, a couple years ago when I brought this up on this platform, a scholar that I've cited and supported and looked up to and think is still really important, contacted me off the record and kind of was mad that I was. I forgot exactly how he put it, but he was saying I was undermining my own argument by saying I referenced or listened to or gave some legitimacy to SteveCokely. And I was like, why would you say that? Like, where does what he does undermine anything that I'm arguing? And what you know and it didn't go, the back and forth didn't go well. And my point was that he never said anything. He just got upset. So I was like, so I do bring up that apparently me even just saying that I've had this history and experience and some sort of appreciation for Coakley is worthy of exile. But it's true, I did, and I still do appreciate and what and particularly in his lectures on the Boule and the Greek organizations and their fealty to the white ones is you know so anyway, that. Rest in peace to SteveCokely, and I continue to appreciate. So as I said a minute ago, I'm just gonna play like the first 2 minutes of this video, and I'll put the full video in the show description. It's um, from Lil Bill, who I was introduced to through FD Signifier and talked to once or twice, and who I check out from time to time. And I did watch this video, this new video the other day. What even is biracial? And I just want to play the intro, and then I'll put the link in the show description. Encourage people to check out the whole thing. As you can see, it's a little bit of a long 90-minute or so deep dive, which is but very entertaining and interesting. But here we go. Here, we just play a couple minutes of this.
I'm gonna tell y'all the truth with this, man. I really ain't want to do this video like that, because it's one of those things that I know no matter what I say or how I try to break this down, somebody is going to wind up showing their whole butthole in the replies, and it's going to turn me into that Mekhi Phifer smoking meme. Y'all know the one with the multiple spliffs. I'm also going to cut the rest of y'all off at the pass and say, no, I did not interview any of my biracial folk for this video, and that was by design, really. I did, however, talk to a few offline to get their thoughts on mine, which is kind of where I think I'm going with this.
So he didn't ask me. I'm not one of them, by the way. I didn't get asked on or off record my thoughts on this. So, but I'm gonna offer them anyway. So anyway, yeah.
A lot of this biracial isn't black, or you gotta have 4 black grandparents nonsense, I think really comes down to the fact that a lot of the folk that say this type of stuff don't really interact with biracial folk in real life. And so y'all just draw your own conclusions based off of the little bit of anecdotal knowledge that you gleaned from off of the internet. Kind of just sounds like public discourse, period. But anyway, whatever. It's wild how the same niggas who made blackness is not a monolith, shorthand for I actually prefer flounder to catfish, won't extend the same type of grace to folk who just so happen to have one non-black parent or even grandparent. My point isn't to prove that
Hold up, that graphic is hilarious. And he uses this throughout the video, but the hold on, how did I the mayonnaise and then the peanut butter and the Carlton dance is hilarious. But let me just get this. Hold on a second. Dang. But this one here, the mayonnaise, the Nutella, and the peanut butter in the middle is hilarious to me.
To have one non-black parent or even grandparent. My point isn't to prove that biracial is black, because duh, nigga, or how this whole conversation is just symptomatic of dumb niggas spending way too much time around even dumber niggas who then gas them for having the analytical skill of a potato. But it's to talk about how and why this discourse has and continues to be so goofy to me, using my mother as an example.
All right, so I'm going to stop it there, and again, I'll put the link in the show description. Encourage folks interested in this topic to check it out. And I actually would like more folks in all of the African diaspora to spend whatever few minutes of intellectual time you can afford to these kinds of questions, because while I appreciate what Bill is doing in this video, there's some things that in there that there's some nuance that I think he doesn't address that I think does need to be addressed. One, I admit, I just am generally I have a general discomfort when people use their own family as examples for this kind of public work. And so I'm not even criticizing or judging him for starting as he does with a discussion of his mother. But I don't know. I've always just had I just have a visceral negative reaction initially to people doing that, even when it's done well and justifiable. I just don't like the invitation in some of these spaces for people to comment on one's parents directly and be critical of them, as is sometimes the case, because that invites responses that are often inappropriate themselves. But my other reason for saying that I don't, in this case, I'm raising his use of his mother as criticism is too strong a word, but as a nuanced point that I would want to have isolated for this discussion, is that, as he says, his mother is Puerto Rican and has a light-skinned Puerto Rican in the white context, in the Latin American context, white parent herself. And I admit that one of the nuanced threads that I would want to pull and have more discussion of are, well, just these variations of so-called biraciality, multiraciality, or mixture. and what do they all mean? So, for instance, I don't think it's the same to put all in the same category of biracial, multiracial, or mixed. For instance, him or his mother and me with a black father and a white Jewish mother. I think we're all part of the same African diaspora, and soda all day. But in terms of a detailed, nuanced analysis of mixture in Black America, I think that difference needs to be isolated a little bit more, including some of the other examples that he mentions in the video. For instance, the in fact, let me pull that video back up. So for instance, at one point he does, let's see if I can put this where I want it to be. He all right, I'll start there. What he does is, so he's saying like he puts up all these flags here. He's like, these are all like everybody here is part of the community, right?
Because it's not based entirely on physical traits, or at least it shouldn't be based on physical presentation, which is kind of the point of this video, right? Like I said in the white leftist video, blackness is the shared experience of oppression based on descending from sub-Saharan Africans. So yeah, if you're Bahamian, then you're black. If you're Barbudan, then you're black. If you're Panamanian, you're also black.
So, but this is one of I'm stopping it here, but this is one of the points that I wanted to make in response. So, like and this is sort of what I'm talking about, and not that I want to create more division and disunity, but in terms of isolating the specifics and reaching some clarity, quote unquote. So, like Bill doesn't mention in the video that yes, Panama, very black country, but within Panama and within Latin America, there are still all kinds of crazy racial divisions and confusion. A lot of it having to do with, and I got to put the link to this in the show description to this great interview that did a while back on Panama and race. But the point being that the racial categorization in Panama is based on U.S. codes of U.S. racial codes that were imposed as part of garnering U.S. support for a so-called liberated Panama or an independent Panama. So you have all of these segregated conditions of Afro-Panamanians. You have racial hostilities and divisions, and there's still issues with complexion, and you still have the indigenous population and where do they fit in and all this and all these racial categories of akin to mulatto and octoroon and trigueña and the triple heritage. All of this stuff is going on. But it's also part of the Latin America reverse of the one drop rule, where one drop of white in Panama and Latin America is generally the reverse of how it works here. One drop of white makes you white, whereas one drop of black in the United States traditionally had made you black. So again, before you even get into the specifics of how one looks, it's a different sort of arrangement and approach, and there are differences in how blackness is understood and organized around societally, never mind politically. So that was one part of the video that where I again think some nuance. So yeah, in terms of understanding Pan-Africanism and the diaspora and all that, yeah, if you're from these countries, you mostly would qualify as being part of the African diaspora, although there are parts of Panama and people who identify in Latin America who would not accept that identification, who would be identified as mestizo or the stereotypical light skin, or just, so like it's all kind like it's just not the same. So that was one other point that I just wanted to so that's right. I made a note in my notes here, like I can be, and maybe only can be black here in the United States, but I cannot be black in Panama. It's a whole other level of struggle for me to which I've had in some cases of trying to clarify, you know. But in terms of just showing up, mm-mm, mm-mm. And I think that would be the case for a lot of people who in this country who identify as black and who would identify as being black, despite being some form of a mixture. All right, so let's see. I said at 21, he mentions Vin Diesel, and I'm not really wanting to play. Oh, so like at one point he mentions Carol Channing as the former now deceased actress performer, but who was identified at one point as having one black grandparent. And then he identifies her as biracial. And then he does raise a question at some point in the video, like at some point, when do we start to like, all right now? But he's saying and I'm like, I don't know. But again, I felt like the visceral defensive reaction of like, I feel like many people feel like the other day, it was just, it was reported to me that by a certain group that my self-reference as a light skin is inappropriate because mixed biracial people don't qualify. Light skin is designated only for fully black, two black parents who are just light skin. And on some level, I understand that because the defensiveness that I'm feeling vis-a-vis this, they would feel vis-a-vis me. And this is again why this is also there's so much that needs to be understood about the settler colonial origins of race and racial designations and all of this, because we identify as that old media studies point that we identify who we are as much by what we are not as who we are. So we have to draw distinctions by saying that I am not that. So when a two black parent person who's light skinned wants to self-refer as light skinned, and then I say the same thing, they're saying, no, because I'm not him. Because if I'm him, then he's me, but we're different. And then there is that I think unspoken defensiveness around I want to defend my blackness. And I've had these personal experiences where light skin, I remember one in particular in the Navy, a light skinned black man when I was darker skinned, he spoke his frustration at being lighter than me with two black parents. So, you know what? I'm gonna go get this. I meant to do this. I'm gonna go get this visual real quick. Hold on one second. Hold on. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. All right, just so we're clear, like this is just the closest ones that I had available. So this is more or less what I look like for most of my formative years. Can I get that? I don't know how well that's showing up. All right. So look at all that hair. All right. So, and at times I would even be a little bit darker than that. So there were one or two experiences that I would have where somebody like this old buddy of mine in the Navy would say, "How can I can't believe I got two black parents and I'm lighter than you." So there is that I want to protect what blackness I have and then draw these distinctions. So when Bill, he raises So I'm not saying, I wouldn't certainly want to say Carol Channing can't count, and having one black grandparent disqualifies her. But I do feel, I did have that visceral reaction of saying, but I got two. And then somebody else saying, well, I got three, or I got four. So where does the biracial, multiracial, half whatever we're calling it, where does it? And then at one point he mentions Vin Diesel, when he brings up this because he does, I think, do a good job of at least raising some of the nuance around who not only identifies as black, but who are given black acting roles. How do people show up? It's not just how you look, but it's how you show up in the community, this, that, and the third. And the one thing, and I couldn't find it, I admit I couldn't find it, but in the early 2000s, when I was in grad school and teaching a class at College Park, there was a story that had come out about Vin Diesel. So this would have been around 2001, 2002, 2003, somewhere in there. And we talked about it in class. That's why I remember it so well, because it was like a multi-class discussion. Because the point of the story was that it was discussed that Vin Diesel was biracial, but he has this ambiguous look. And his PR rep at the time said in this interview something to the effect, we want him to be ambiguous. And we don't want him overtly identifying one way or the other. Because it's that ambiguity that makes him so marketable to such a wide array of audiences. And I'm not entirely sure why I wanted to bring that up here, other than to just remind of that fact. At the time, I remember thinking, and still do think, that if that was indeed the approach, that on the one hand, it explained so much about how the industry wanted to relate in terms of race, wanted to market race. And please, if you haven't, see the interview I did with Marcel Rosa Salas. Please watch that interview about the Total Market American book. We got to do more interviews with her and more discussion of that book. Because what I'm trying to get to is a point about really just the marketing and politics of race, and in this case, biraciality and ambiguity. And with so little of it being about what does race actually mean, what does it mean to be identified as a part of a community, what are the relationships that these different communities so isolated and genrefied have to one another. And then I thought at the time, and still probably do feel this way, that if there was an individual critique to be had, that it should be that people who are ambiguous shouldn't play into that for marketability, and should want to play into it to highlight the contradictions about how these differences in the different communities are treated. Not to try to disappear into ambiguity, with the idea being you have nothing, you have no racial identification and no political home base, so to speak, and and therefore should have nothing to say about the realities of race and racism and anti-blackness, et cetera, and so forth. I don't think that should be the goal, to lean into that. It should be to say, if I am ambiguous and I am here, it is because I am the product of two warring societies that have still not gotten their hostilities worked out. So I think that's what I meant to say here about my note. But so what I also made a note of is that that Bill does talk a little bit about is that that politics matter, and then I added as do gender and attractiveness. So at one point he brings up the differences between J. Cole and Drake, and how they J. Cole leans into his blackness and his relationship to a broader black world, despite having a white mother, in ways that Drake doesn't. Again, he talks a little bit about Latin America, but I don't think gets into the differences in the one drop rule that I mentioned a moment ago. He says some very interesting things about the singer Tyla that I don't know anything about, and about how she has, in a way, it's been kind of like what he says about Tyla is kind of what I had said previously about Trevor Noah. That apparently Tyla, also like Noah, come from the colored community in South Africa. And when Tyla at one point apparently said she's not black, but meaning that in the context of South Africa, not in the context of the broader diaspora. And she got apparently a lot of backlash from that, with people not understanding that there is a colored community, and then the history as to why there is this colored community. And I'll add the link if folks are interested. But this was one of the reasons why years ago, when his book was imposed on my school of communication at the time, we were forced to read it, and then students were, and preferred faculty and their students were taken to Comedy Central to see a taping of Trevor Noah. But I read his book and reviewed it, and tried to raise with my colleagues that there's a lot in this book that should be raised for serious critical discussion about race, media, performance, etc., and not just this blind praise. I found there to be a lot of problems with how Trevor Noah plays off of his biraciality, his coloredness, his blackness, his Africanness, his chastising of black people, while claiming an authenticity and an authority coming from the continent, and where he says he experienced a level of racism that black people here, trying to draw those kinds of distinctions. And I was hating at the time too. I was like, bro, you were born after apartheid, son. Stop acting like you struggled through it, son. No, it was a little more substantive than that. I'll put the link in there. But the point is, really what I'm getting at is that similar to my previous criticisms of popular discussions of biraciality and Drake in particular, and Obama even more specifically, is that very rarely do these backgrounds or blends or mixtures lead to heightened levels of exchange and understanding about the two communities. So Drake has done nothing to help black people and Jews better understand one another. Obama has done nothing to help clarify the hostilities involved in the racial constructs as they've been applied here in this country. It just leaves us with all of this kind of added confusion. And then because by design you have people like Drake and Tyla and Trevor Noah being delivered upon us to be the leaders of discussions about biraciality and mixture and so on, it just becomes more of madness and a problem. He doesn't say anything. I was hoping he would discuss it further, and maybe I'll have to find more of his catalog to see if Bill talks more about it in another video. But he passingly makes the point that what's her name's character in Sinners has been used to condemn we who are mixed as being evidence, as Bill says in his video, that the call is coming from inside the house, that the those of us who are mixed are more likely to betray the black community, as was the case in Sinners. And I admit my view and criticism of that film avoided that particular discussion. So maybe I need to revisit that. And if it is in fact true that it's being used in the broader communities, to justify anti-mixed sentiment, then Bill is right to raise it in for a point of criticism. The last two quick notes I had on this was that everybody, as Bill points out, has their blackness challenged at some point or another. And that's another thing I've experienced, to watch so-called fully Black Americans, for instance, on my first trip to the continent in 96, I remember vividly, there were a number of Black Americans on that trip who had various struggles with, for the first time, having their Blackness challenged by, in one case, a white British, I want to say TSA agent, even though they didn't have that at the time, but what the equivalent of the TSA at the airport, but also on the continent. And having been more accustomed to having my Blackness challenged, it didn't hit the same way. But I saw a number of people on several trips actually experience real struggles over having their Blackness challenged in the context of maybe being around people darker than them, or people being from the continent who struggle identifying in an advanced Pan-African way with those in the diaspora. But Bill brings this up to point out that everybody in the Black community, he argues, goes through a version of this at some point or another, and does this to really expand the circle in a way that I absolutely appreciate, bias admitted. That is, that Bill is saying, as he started off with in the clip I shared at the beginning, mixed people are Black. It's just being increasingly challenged these days. And I'm only, and more than wanting to advocate for my bias, is that I would want the discussion to be centered in radical politics more than is obviously often the case. So whether it's a radical approach to biraciality, multiraciality, or the concept of race in and of itself, that is with an understanding of what is the goal. Is the goal to carve out and disassociate and create a new colored class or group or category, as is the case in South Africa? And to what end would that be? What is the ultimate goal? Is the goal some sort of sovereign, revolutionized Black society, or something else? In other words, I think that part needs to become more clear in how people are engaging the topic. And then, as in my very last note, is something I brought up, that we determine ourselves by what we are not as much as by who we are. So, anyway, I especially in these political spaces, I would encourage more of us to engage this discussion a little bit more, maybe than I'm, at least to the extent that I'm aware, and to try to, as is the case with all these other issues, try to have, find ways to radically intervene, because the video is just more evidence to me that we're not advancing in these discussions. And as, oh man, yeah. Another reason to revisit that Marcel Rosa Salas piece is because we did talk about, and she talks about in her book, the increased prevalence of multiracial people in advertising. And the little Bill video that I'm starting with here is, I think, the intended result. That is, not that we would have something that is, I think, a sound, reasonable response that Bill offers, but that we would have increased confusion. So anyway, come back to, continue that discussion at some point. Just wanted to quickly chime in on that. All right. All right, one more thing before we get to the Tyler Perry piece, and then move on for the day. And folks, appreciate you all joining me this afternoon. Please do like, share, subscribe, support the platform here. Please, and I don't imagine this would be the case, if for some reason you're here and not a subscriber, Patreon supporter, channel member at Black Liberation Media, please correct that. That channel has been jailbroken, in so to speak, and can now earn revenue. So please support that over there as well. And but definitely appreciate your presence here. So, all right. So the other day, I responded to an UmarJohnson short clip where he was advocating Black people creating our own hospitals and birthing centers. And I was just raising, and then he was leaning back into this, well, we're a $1.8 trillion people, the buying power mythology. And then so I was just trying to, and in response to that, one of you sent, I thought polite but critical response that said, but Umar has, because part of my criticism was that he is not overtly critical of capitalism, something like that. And this person said, no, but he is critical of capitalism. So, and he sent me a couple of examples, which I've watched, and I'll play at least a little bit of them. I think I got them to the point where he mentions. And I think for some of us, the issues will be pretty evident. But first of all, I appreciate the perfectly appropriate critical response to my other video and saying, I think you could do Brother Johnson, Dr. Johnson, a little better. So this is just at the beginning. So let me see if it starts off at the beginning, and maybe that's why I said it here. Let's just see here. And,
there's African American studies at New Jersey City University. He was breaking down genocide, right? He was giving us the history. Polish Jewish lawyer Raphael Lemkin introduced the word genocide in 1944, right? Based on his observation of what was going on in Armenia. There are 5 key points to genocide. I'm pretty sure you're aware of them. But there's one that really struck me, right? It says deliberately creating conditions of life calculated to bring about their
person up with them. They will push the propaganda that capitalism works. They'll say, I worked hard and I got here. You may have worked hard and got here, but at the same time, there was a little bit of luck that allowed you to succeed, because there's so many other businesses who did finance.
All right, let me start
and
here.
Unfortunately, our celebrity class and our well-to-do American African community, they haven't done enough to invest back into their own.
We on the same page.
You know, and this is important because I was reading an article talking about white startup companies, right? And it talked about how a significant amount of white startup companies don't get their funding from banks. They get their funding from private white capital. And I think that Black people who are lucky enough to succeed in business, in order to avoid responsibility for pulling another Black person up with them, they will push the propaganda that capitalism works. They'll say, I worked hard and I got here. You may have worked hard and got here, but at the same time, there was a little bit of luck that allowed you to succeed, because there's so many other businesses who did exactly what you did and may have even done it better that did not succeed. So what I find with
just real quick, first of all, his previous point is in some ways a good one, that Black banks or Black businesses don't get the same level of investment that white businesses do. They don't have the relationships to either banks or private equity that Black. So this has been, well, we've talked a lot about this. Future almost. Dr. Erica Brown is writing about that, and so. But that's part of the structural inequality associated with capitalism. He is also right here that so-called successful Black business people do like to promote the idea that capitalism is a solution. Again, I would just want to stress and add that where my and other people's work is important here is that we've shown that these narratives that capitalism is a possibility are encouraged and imposed by design. So it's not just that successful Black business people promote that; it's that unsuccessful, so-called, and unresourced people are promoted that same mythology and ultimately believe it as well, even without experiencing any level of material so-called success at all.
In the Black entrepreneurial class is this use of capitalism as a defense from me needing to participate in collective economics, you see. And so we never really.
And then yeah, just like with and this is why a couple years ago, and some people got upset with me, I think unfairly, but you know, all right, that when I tried to make that point that socialism is better than Kwanzaa is because we get these kinds of empty statements when Africans want to avoid the white Eurocentric Marxist analysis. So they say we were cooperative and collective before Europe. True. We don't need Europe and Marxist analysis to free ourselves. I could need, maybe not need, but to say that, but it's like saying you might be able to row ashore using an old piece of wood, but if you have a paddle, you know what I'm saying? But okay, but fine. But my point really though is that the current socioeconomic problem facing African people is capitalism. So why not use arguably some of the best critical analysis of it, and those in the African world and others who have used that analysis for their particular settings to advance. But to avoid all of that, we end up with the cooperative economics phrasing. But then it just leads me to want to raise specific questions about the specific African society we're talking about. So is it cooperative economics so that we end up with a monarchy? And we cooperatively arrange our economic society for a monarchy to have a bulk of. Is it cooperative? Because if it's cooperative and then democratically redistributed, then it's communism or socialism. We don't have to. We can stop saying we're not that and say we're, because when we don't do that, what we end up with is people saying we're engaging in cooperative economics when it's really just the susu. You invest in me, I invest in. That's not going to build anything. Rotating a pot that everybody can take advantage of after a certain amount of time and then circulate, that's wildly limited, and not why people are poor and not how people get out of poverty. So why not engage socialism? And again, it can be done. Look, Kwame Ture, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, other versions of many of you in the audience are in various Black-centered, African-centered organizations that engage openly in socialist arguments or analysis that don't subsume themselves beneath the white man, the great white hope. But anyway, my point really is that this whole thing about cooperative economics without an appropriate critique or understanding or analysis of capitalism and a promotion of socialism, I think it leads us back to where he would then come back and say successful Black business people don't support Black businesses the way white successful business people support white businesses, as if this has anything to do with the inequality between the two communities.
We had a collective economic movement outside of our major Black organizations. So you look at Garvey, you look at the Nation of Islam, you look at the Hebrews, you look at the Panthers, you look at the Nawapians. A lot of your economic movements came out of those types of organizations. Also, major Black churches, especially the Civil Rights era, the Breadbasket Campaign, so forth and so on, the Adam Clayton Powell. A lot of the economically.
And this is exactly the point I'm getting at. All that he is listing here, they all had different approaches. They were not all on the same page. So that lack of clarity in putting Operation Breadbasket in the same category as the Garvey movement, in the same category as the Panthers, in the same category, it's not helpful, because to say that they were all practicing cooperative economics is misleading, because they were not doing it in the same way. And of course the Panthers were advocating openly for socialism. So this is okay. Yeah.
Economic driven agendas for Black America came through Black conscientious churches and organizations, which we really don't have too many left at this time. And the ones that we do have, they've gotten pretty conservative. But with that being said, I think Black people are confused. I think black people are confused as to whether or not they should just keep pushing forward with the capitalist agenda or whether they should embrace this economic collectivism. Because the whole narrative of the American power structure is capitalism works. Capitalism does not work because capitalism requires poverty. And capitalism wouldn't even be a topic of conversation if it wasn't for slavery and colonization, which gave capitalism an unfair benefit that allowed it to look as if it could actually serve the needs of the world's majority. So when black people hear people saying, well, just work hard, you'll get there, versus let's do this together, which way do I go? Because I know we hate each other. We don't like to work together. We undermine each other. We have a sick pathological competition that exists amongst us. Or go over here and keep working hard. I'm never going to get the loan from the bank. So what do I do? And when people are unsure as to what to do, they do nothing.
All right, so got one more that was sent, but so obviously he's right about at least some of that there. But again, without the clarity around how to respond, and the confusion is encouraged because there's no, because so part of it, I think, is because so much of the criticism of what is doesn't condemn capitalism enough and offer up socialism as an alternative. The cooperative economics is too vague. The collective economics is too vague. And it also doesn't produce anything that would substantively change the conditions of most people in the community. So again, I just don't see why, if folks don't want to say, let's just call it socialism and go for that, I don't see why there isn't, which is, I think, wrong. But why not just say, then let's go after the wealth that's actually created and redistributed up to the 0.1% and stop telling each other that we need to be better business people and capitalists and we need to better cooperate and collectively use what resources we have, which is very little and cannot be used in the way that people often think they can be used. So we should keep advocating farther and farther to the left and then and go from there. But yeah, so that's that's not what I meant to do. So let me pull up. All right. Oh man, so my bad. I thought I did it again. I really did think that I had the timestamps set on this one, but I don't. So let me just all right, let's well, just do this again here. And I'll put these
Begin to
links in
consider
there, so.
capitalism as a viable economic system of liberation is because slavery gave capitalism a 500-year head start over any other modern economic system. We were the first capital in capitalism, and African people need to understand that. The enslaved African was the first capital in capitalism. So when you force people to work 4 or 5 centuries for free and you build up wealth off of their backs, which gives birth to an industrial revolution, and you use that to tout how economically intelligent you are, it's very fraudulent because it was slavery that made capitalism what capitalism is. So along with El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, Malcolm X, fellow Pan-Africanist, child of the Garvey movement, I would agree. Capitalism has no solutions in it for black people. But what we have amongst us is we have capitalist-minded neo-Negroes who try to seduce black people into thinking that imitating the white man's economic system offers some hope for black economic liberation. And that is totally dishonest. It is opportunistic. It has no evidence to support it. Capitalism has never saved anybody. It didn't save Europe. It didn't save Asia. It didn't save Africa. Capitalism is not a system that one uses to liberate. Capitalism is the exploitation of the many by the few. Capitalism seeks to make 99% of the world the dependency of the 1% of the world. In America, we have about 100 Europeans who own more wealth than everybody else in the country.
Yeah.
Than everybody else in the country. And globally, there's about 1,000 people who own more wealth than the rest of the world put together. That is capitalism. How can anyone believe that a system as exploitative, selfish, and unfair as that can be used to liberate African people? Capitalism cannot be on the table of discussion.
Now, again, one reason why people believe that is because of the massive amounts of propaganda that encourage it and that are distilled through Black outlets, and that I think are even distilled through some of the forms of the criticism of capitalism that we see from people like Dr. Johnson. That is, that all of this sounds very good, but if the argument is still Black celebrities and Black business people don't do enough to support us, and we need a vaguely described collective economics, that's not going to help clarify anything. It's not going to help clarify the confusion or to help us break through the propaganda that is consistently promoting capitalism or Black capitalism as a solution.
If we're talking liberation economics, as far as the privatization of industry, I believe that everything should be nationalized, or at least should be considered to be nationalized, unless the government has a rationale that would justify why any of the major industries are in the hands of private citizens. And I would dare argue that nobody but a capitalist would want to put critical industries in the hands of private citizens. For example, why is food in the hands of private citizens?
So I just jokingly want to say, but that is socialism. Or so maybe he's thinking of this as a revolutionary nationalist project where cooperative economics are resources are democratically redistributed so that there is no poverty or class. But we won't. But to avoid the allegations of Eurocentrism, we won't call it communism or socialism. Look, I'm not mad. Look, I wouldn't even be mad. Honestly, I wouldn't even be mad if he said, look, what we need is a socialist economy. I just don't want to give credit to the whites, and I don't want to be seen as being white Eurocentric or white allied. I don't want snow bunnies. I don't want snow bunny analysis. I don't want snow bunny adjacent analysis. So I'm not calling it communism for that reason, but ultimately that is what we want. We would just not call it that because we already had that in an African. Like if he went through those steps more clearly and said that, I would even not be mad at that. But perfectly honestly, I think as objective and fair as I can be, I think that it does his audience a disservice. Again, I would love, and for one part of my life spent what I thought was, not what I thought, I spent a lot of time trying to organize and arrange these, but discussions, debates, etc. But I think it's a disservice to not introduce an audience and encourage the study of socialism, communism, and in particular, what those ideas have meant when engaged by Africans in the diaspora as a starting point. It doesn't. All of them offered up all their brilliant analyses and criticisms of the Eurocentricity of Marx, etc. So, in engaging the study, does the work that some would want and feel necessary of challenging the Eurocentrism and the any tendency towards the elevation of another white man. But it feels to me like it's more intellectual work to avoid it and to just ultimately to then easily dismiss it with it's Eurocentric dismissal. But I think it ultimately is a disservice to the audience. Like, encourage people to engage and do the study themselves as part of a collective involved in organized efforts to rebel or to liberate oneself. Yeah. All right.
Okay. Why is healthcare in the hands of private citizens?
Yeah.
Why is water in the hands of private citizens?
Exactly.
Anything that is critically necessary for the survival of humanity should never be private.
And yes, absolutely, Marx didn't create socialism or communism, again, but the attitude among so many is that if there is any form of study of them, that he is to be given credit, or whiteness is to be given credit. So again, that's sort of my point. Kwame Ture used to make that point all the time. Wait. Other than Diallo's channel, I haven't heard. I didn't mean to put this comment up, but since it's there, people listening to these platforms, but they won't admit, other than Diallo's channel, I've never heard anything about capitalist critiques until BPM, BLM. Okay. Now I'm in the chat. Jared, respect the analysis, but let me ask you this directly. If capitalism is the core problem, how do we explain the recurring problem where Black cooperative success? So first of all, this would be my point. Where is the recurring pattern of Black cooperative success? There is none. What are we calling success? That's my point. So I'm not saying, first let me back up. I've not made the argument. I've not made the standard Marxist claim that capitalism, as you put it, is the core problem, is the core problem. I've not said that. In fact, my argument has always been the internal colonialism piece, because I felt it more than anything satisfies the contradiction between capitalism and white supremacy. And it doesn't matter to me at this point which came first. They're here. They're inextricably linked. The internal colonialism model satisfies all of that and allows for an appropriate engagement of socialism, communism, materialist analysis, and those historical struggles, as with all of the appropriate cultural points. Again, the so-called divide, to me, is satisfied through that lens. What I am saying is that it's a disservice to, I think, your comment is what the disservice I'm criticizing leads to. This vague claim that we don't need socialism because it's white and we have African cooperative and collective economic history to fall back on and experience to fall back on does not solve anything. There is no recurring pattern where Black cooperatives succeed. We did it a little bit with Geechee, with the late great Amos Wilson's Blueprint for Black Power. I would encourage people to do it with Jessica Gordon Emhard's Collective Courage. Look up the histories of the cooperatives these authors describe in their work. To the extent that any of them even still exist, their impact is marginal. Not because the Black people involved are wrong, backwards, have a bad culture of spending and all this other nonsense. No, because of the socioeconomic system of capitalism. That's why Du Bois ended up himself saying and abandoning the cooperative movement, because he said, if for cooperatives to work, you need government involvement. If the government gets involved, it's socialism. So he said, let's just do socialism. So that's exactly my point. That's exactly my point. And why these approaches, I think, ultimately do their audiences a disservice by trying to avoid a core problem of capitalism and an appropriate analysis of it, which would mean you have to engage in a socialist critique. It doesn't mean a socialist critique maybe is all you need, but to reach a final analysis on capitalism that doesn't involve a socialist critique is at best incomplete.
Because when you privatize food, when you privatize land, when you privatize agriculture, when you privatize water, when you privatize medical health care, you are in essence giving individuals control over the lives of others. And I don't support that.
I would just like to say, add in here that, as far as we are concerned, there's basically people all around the world.
Done an excellent job. In what my elder just said, the European has done an excellent job. He has done a marvelous job convincing black people globally that capitalism can actually work. And so you have black people. Oh, go ahead. Okay, no, that's the call. He has convinced black people.
So this is what I'm saying, Anthony. Black communities have built wealth institutions, business districts, farms, co-ops for generations. We have practiced mutual aid, collective pooling, rotating credit, and land-based governance. Of course, and it has led to what? In this settler colonial capitalist society, it has led, all of that has led to what? Violence, black wealth heading to zero, 4 white men having more land in this country than all the black people combined. Black people being paid 15 cents on the white dollar, twice the unemployment. All these statistics are still here. So what? This is what I'm saying. Again, it's not that black people haven't done great things or attempted great things. It's that it doesn't work. It doesn't complete the liberatory project because it doesn't address the settler colonial capitalist structures that are the context.
That capitalism can actually work. But when you look closely at capitalism, you can see that capitalism gives rise to poverty. Right. You can't be capitalist and not believe in poverty. Because in order for the rich to get rich, they have to exploit people's labor at a low cost. If there is not a large exploitable class of cheap labor, there is no capitalism. And
Correct.
That's why you can always find poor people a stone's throw away from the richest businesses and corporations in any country.
That's right.
Because capitalism is the mother of poverty.
Too much of us are comfortable in our suffering for whatever reason. I don't know. I'm not comfortable because I see too much suffering out there. You go to the jail.
I think that's where it stops. So yeah, I definitely appreciate the appropriate criticism of the last video, and I'll appreciate criticism of this one. But I don't even want. It's sort of going back to my this point about the civilizational crisis I think we're in around methodology. I'm not even mad at his conclusion about socialism. I'm more bothered by the methods taken to get there. And I do happen to think that the conclusion would be different if the methods change, by which I just simply mean engaging the work in the history and then doing the work to explain why socialism is wrong, why Africans engaging in socialism historically has not provided or produced some of the best analyses in the world. Because the critique is exactly right. But then to put so much of his time and emphasis on black celebrities and black businesses is producing the solution is, I think, is missing the point. Hey, folks, thank you for gifting these memberships. Strin, S. Mexi. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Reese Space, thank you. Oh, sorry, I missed that one. Thank you for joining. No Innocent White. And Old Grease, thank you for rejoining, joining again. Appreciate it. All right, everybody. One more. Let's move on and to Reese, I appreciate you joining. I don't know about all the caps though. I don't know that I'm furthering his con by validating the play. First of all, I don't know that Umar is a plagiarist, so I don't know that. He's an actor. This is not his conclusion. He has no analysis. He's a plagiarist. So I don't know that I'm giving him or validation. I'm responding to just what is sent that overlaps with some of the work that I do. That's all. And Umar is still, even on his decline, relatively speaking, he's still enormously popular among a good amount of Black people in this country and elsewhere, and he's even remains popular, even if not agreed with all the time by my students. So, and you're accusing him of being a plagiarist for parroting other people's ideas. My students often parrot his. So to have a critique of him is, I think, important still. I don't see it as a validation of him at all. But okay, folks, please do all the things to support the platform. And you know what? I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to squeeze in one more quick thing here from my favorite one of my favorite analysts overall lately, apparently, given what my algorithm is saying. I was gonna, but Chris Norland, based out of South Korea, in this video about
GDP
Carolyn Levitt, he said something about why she's leaving and all this stuff and all this speculation. Did she get herself pregnant to get out of being the White House spokesperson? I don't know. I don't even care that much about that. But what I liked about what he brought up in here is this point about the great decoupling and showing, and I'll put the link to this in the show description also if you want to watch it. I'm not going to play it. I just wanted to show this graph because what he's showing is relevant to my own interests around how often GDP is misrepresented and brought up in terms of talking about Black economics. So again, I want to remind people GDP is gross domestic product. It is not a measurement of wealth or income. It does not measure it does not measure inequality within a given society. What it is a measurement of the wealth accrued by those who own the economy. All right. And what Norland is showing here in this great decoupling from GDP is that corporate profits and wealth goes up even when GDP goes down and real wages stay flat. So this dotted line here going up are corporate profits. This middle solid green line is where GDP growth is. And this red line is where real wages and jobs are, kind of steadily going down. And oversimplifying it for my purposes is that when we constantly hear financial literacists telling Black audiences that we have $2 trillion, that's our GDP, and we're the 10th strongest nation in the world, and this, that, and the third, what they're not talking about or ever identifying, in addition to misdefining GDP, because that's not what GDP is, they're ignoring this kind of reality. So you could say there's $2 trillion in the Black community, but that's not a measurement of inequality within the Black community. It's also not a measurement of the wealth that could be used in any way that the Black community would want. It's not democratically controlled because we're not a socialist Black community. And so what ends up happening is you have a handful of people who make all the money benefiting from it and then promoting GDP as a number going up, saying it's a good thing. And this is showing you GDP is going up or down is irrelevant because their corporate profits are going up. That's all that, and GDP is either going down or sort of growing at a slow rate, and no matter what it's doing, the profits of the corporate world are going up and up and up, in part because this country doesn't need to produce anything to create wealth for the people who own it. And you could increase the GDP by paying executives more and firing more people, increasing the stock value of the stock. Talking about GDP is great, or GDP is a little lower, or whatever, but their profits go up no matter what. So I just wanted to. That was it for that. I just wanted to point that out. Just like in his other recent video, pointing to that kind of same reality. That. All right, so I'm going to take a quick break, but in that break, I got a treat for you to set up as a segue. So, as a segue to move to this last part about talking about Tyler Perry, which is really just an excuse to revisit a paper that my co-author just resent in its proper updated form. The one I had on my academia.edu was an older version. I didn't even know that. So the final corrected version is now available in the link in the show description. This book chapter we wrote like 12 years ago. So it's just an excuse to come back to that. And because I had watched all of his films up until that point, I'm always looking for that excuse because I suffered mightily to write that book chapter and to co-write that book chapter, and we're going to make as much use of it as possible. But I do have a treat. So, all right. So Tyler Perry is again being charged with some form. I'm not exactly sure the exact title of what the exact definition. Some sort of misconduct against an actor who had been in one of the Medea Halloween Medea films, where sexual advances in favor for hiring and job promotion was on the offing here. And this is very similar to what was once upon a time depicted of Tyler Perry on that infamous Boondocks episode. Which I will. So I just want to play this little brief clip from that episode because this is in some ways has been be a predictor of what happened in real life. All right. And there's many actual flaws. There's many problems with this episode, but this is the character meaning to be Tyler Perry, and this is the grandpa on the show who was being offered a job on his. And you'll see it's pretty self-evident.
I've just sold Ma Dukes Finds Herself a Man as a movie. And guess who's my leading man?
Really? I'm gonna be in a movie? Oh.
That's right, Bob. And I only have one request. Look, man, all bullshit aside, can I please just have some ass?
All right, so that is in some ways what is alleged to be happening. Now, because that happened on the Boondocks, the theme song, which I still think, I think the theme song is in top 5 of television show theme songs of all time, was performed by our DC area homeboy Asheru. one of the incredible MC, if anyone is unfamiliar. Asheru, unspoken herd, legendary DMV and beyond artist. But once upon a time, Asheru performed with a live group called the L's, which consisted of him on the mic, forgot the brother's name who ran the drum machine, and Umar, another brilliant brother on guitar and bass. And when I was doing Decipher Hip Hop Radio at the mighty WPFW 89.3 FM in Washington, D.C., once upon a time, the L's showed up at the studio and did a live performance in the studio. So I think I got it. So I'm going to play this as a quick break. I'm going to take a quick break, let you all check out this, and then come back and talk about Tyler Perry and the Mantan plan. So let's see. So don't go anywhere. This is the L's featuring Asheru and the Boondocks theme song, which I think you should be able to hear. Move the mic over there.
Yeah. I am the stone that the builder refused. I am the visual, the inspiration that made ladies sing the blues. I'm the spark that makes your idea bright. The same spark that lights the dark so that you can know your left from your right. I am the ballad in your box, the bullet in your gun, the inner glow that lets you know to call your brother's son. The story that just begun, promise of what's to come. And I will remain a soldier till the war is won. Streak this in your drawers, sing of a hunger pain. Want to call out your cause, the thing you don't want to claim. Find the joy, your baby boy, your inner child story, your saving grace. Winner of the race, the B-boy, a new age scholar with millennium mind state, master of education, doctoral candidate. No, that ain't an analogy of me through rap. That's a true that, like for real, a brother really judo flip and chop, chop, chop. A judo flip, you know, a chop, chop, chop. A judo, once you hit capital A, rap and stay with you for a while, and it won't go with judo flip, flip, chop, chop, chop. A judo flip, you know, chop, chop, chop. Judo, once you hit capital A, rap and stay with you for a while, and this is the tale of two cities, from the hoods to the woods, away from the nitty gritty. To the now we all good, no more corner to corner, liquor stores and check cash, and now it's water balls, sharp balls, and spend cash in. Lush greenery, beautiful scenery, a quiet environment, no sirens and machinery. It seems to be so peaceful and not threatening, but there goes the neighborhood as soon as we get settled in. I guess it's true, the way to say it goes. You can change your wardrobe, but not the man under the clothes. And you can walk a mile in these inner city shoes. You still won't understand my inner city blues. I give thanks for the things that mean the most to me, my family and all my other people that are close to me. From the curb to the birds, the gutter to the water, I'ma tell you how it is. I'll tell you how a judo flips. And chop, chop, chop. The judo flip, you know, chop, chop, chop. Hey yo, once you hit capital A, rap and stay with you for a while, and it won't go away. Wait, flip, flip, chop, chop, chop. A
Judo flip,
come on,
chop, chop, chop.
Hey yo, go. Once you hit capital A, rap and stay with you for a while, and it won't go away. Wait.
Live in studio, they killed this joint and went on for a couple hours. Rap it'll stay with you for a while and it won't go away. Yeah. Yeah, that was dope. And maybe number one. I don't know. Is there a better TV show theme song? I don't know. Maybe not. But anyway. So look, I went back and reread the paper. I'm proud of what we did, what we attempted. Admittedly, I can't help but just see where it could have been made better. and I could see where, that's clearly where my imprint was on the paper, the book chapter, and I don't, but essentially what I liked about it, I just want to highlight a couple things from it, and I'll let you all read it for full for a complete analysis or critique or whatever. But what and anyway, the chapter and the book that came out was in the late Ronald Jackson, who's unfortunately passed on, a book called Interpreting Tyler Perry, Perspectives on Race, Class, Gender, and Sexuality, edited by Jamel Santa Cruz Bell and Ronald L. Jackson, 2013. And I should get the whole book and revisit the whole book. I haven't done that in a long time. But our chapter, Tyler Perry and the Mantan Manifesto, Critical Race Theory and the Permanence of Cinematic Anti-Blackness, is the title of the chapter. And just a couple points again that I like that we highlighted here is I really like this point from Emma Coleman Jordan, the calling racism this nation's algorithm of inequality. We talk a little bit about critical race theory, which is our analytical frame for approaching this, and are reminded that CRT did not encourage passivity. Similar, I would argue, to Afro-pessimism, but I know that's an ongoing. And we borrow from Spike Lee's Bamboozled, which I liked more then than I do now, but I still like that it provided us this important frame and a rubric. To understand the pattern of representation and societal function of the Black image, we begin with Spike Lee's Bamboozled, in which the character Thomas Dunwitty, Michael Rappaport, who really don't like, I didn't like him then, I definitely don't like him now, a television network executive in charge of the newest hit Mantan, the New Millennium Minstrel Show, brings in a Yale University PhD in African American Studies, Myrna Goldfarb, to assist against a pending backlash from angry Black viewers. And this was sort of, for me, look, I'm not meaning to diminish the sexual misconduct or inappropriate workplace behavior or any of those other accusations. I know this is the second one I think that has come forward on Perry. So I'm not meaning to diminish that, but I admit that my focus, obviously this was written before these allegations, but my preferred focus is to look at the politics, the political problem that they present, which I think has more of a negative impact on more people than, admittedly, the horrific individual abuses. So I'm not, all right. But so I don't want in the focus on the abuses to lose sight of the nightmare that Perry and others represent politically, is really, I guess, a better way of putting the point. But what we take from that film Bamboozled is what Goldfarb says in the scene that I've loved and just don't want to get a copyright thing for playing now, but is actually on the Black Liberation Media channel. The clip of the Mantan Manifesto is there, where she's explaining how you produce anti-Black regression in media without earning the backlash from the Black community. Because even, and this is very important to understand, that is often, I think, misunderstood, even where the ultimate goal and need for successful commercial media product to satisfy white audiences, even within that need is the need for those white audiences to feel as though they are getting something authentically Black, which means they can't be going through picket lines of Black people to go to their Black movie. So to prevent the picket lines and to, in fact, get Black people to support the product, the Mantan Manifesto was developed in this Spike Lee film, but we've appropriated and showed how Tyler Perry adheres to this even up till today, to defend himself from what should be righteous political critique. So starting right with number one, The Mantan Manifesto says you have to gainfully employ African Americans in front of and behind the camera. And that, more than anything, is the number one defense. Don't be mad at these black folks. At least they hire black people. Then it says, let the audience decide. Don't, which is another way of saying don't hate. Don't listen to these hating critics. Let the audience decide if it's good or not. Because, of course, the audience can't decide because the audience has been propagandized and marketed to and by today's standards, surveilled to the point that those in power can more meticulously and style their product to those audiences in ways that make it harder to determine and to isolate the hostility embedded in it. Similarly, number 3, who are these would-be cultural police? Who determines what is black? We're not saying anything about the entire African American community. So when you see, again, you can almost, these same statements apply all the way to today. It's just satire. If they don't like it, F them. And lastly, always smile, wear kente cloth, reference Dr. King, and remember this show was created by a non-threatening black male. That is another important point we pick up on in our chapter here. So we go over some of the history of the stereotypes in black film because we identify and coin a new one. So you get the Toms, the Coons, the Mulattoes, the Mammies, the Bucks. Cedric Robinson is referenced in here again for his discussion. And I actually forgot. So recently I revisited this and I forgot that we had read and reviewed some of Robinson's work on this for this chapter. But in just in his discussion of the popular version of blackness that is offered by popular film and media, parroting these standard stereotypes. And with the goal of in that, as James Dorman observes, the minstrel black was represented as an essentially unthreatening figure. So this idea that is spoken in Spike Lee's film would be promoted as a way to defend Tyler Perry, even in 2025, is fascinating, given that it has its history going all the way back to the foundation of popular culture in this society, which has always been based on an anti-black portrayal of blackness. The use of non-threatening black males satiates the political need to maintain popular images of subordinate communities. Helan Page described the subordinated relationship in terms of the embraceable black male that must be fashioned cinematically along lines that appease the existing stereotypes and defense mechanisms that white America holds of black people generally and black men specifically. And this is my favorite part to go back and visit because, man, I've been hating on Boyce Watkins for so long. Boyce Watkins has been wrong on so many levels for so many reasons for so many years. He's literally the first pundit and so-called scholar that I criticize for buying power mythology. And then he's right back here using the Mantan Manifesto to defend Tyler Perry back in 2010. And if folks don't remember, Spike Lee had come out because, as I said earlier, to self-define, we have to distance ourselves from what we are not. So Spike Lee wanted to always make clear, I'm not him. I'm more politically and culturally important and relevant. I'm not doing the anti-black stuff that Tyler Perry does in his films. And of course, Spike Lee can look better in distinction, being juxtaposed against Tyler Perry. Who wouldn't? But here, Boyce Watkins says, I don't agree with Spike Lee, and I am actually quite proud of Perry's achievements. On one hand, we can argue that Perry's films are an exciting view into the life of a man who started with nothing and ended up with everything. He's hugged up with Oprah in every other picture. He's even built a studio in Atlanta that employs hundreds of African-American actors, writers, producers, sound engineers, etc. For that, he should be applauded. So here again, Boyce Watkins is wrong. Doesn't understand the context and is just supportive of any Black material success, regardless of the cost. The other favorite piece for me out of this was, well, one of them is this here, where we had fun with this. In I Can Do Bad All By Myself, when Medea believes that an intruder has invaded her home, she attempts to awaken her brother Joe to investigate. Instead of trying to protect himself and his sister, Joe instructs Medea to go get him. Joe instructs Medea to go get him. He rethinks this passive position only when he remembers that he may have left his marijuana in the intruder's sight. So he awakens to protect his marijuana, but not to defend his sister or himself. This depiction is an extension of what we call the smoky, the half-baked coon stereotype. This filmic trope gained popularity in the 1995 release of Friday, featuring Chris Tucker as Smokey, the ever-high sidekick of Ice Cube's protagonist Craig, and later helped propel the career of Dave Chappelle, whose underground hit Half Baked featured the comedian as another ever-high black lead. Tyler Perry continues the Smokey, the half-baked coon stereotype in his characters Joe and Medea, for Perry describes Medea as a pot-smoking, loudmouth grandmother. The emergence of Smokey, the half-baked coon, took its place alongside previously established black stereotypes and would prepare the next generation for Perry's particular iteration. So I would have wanted to have, I would have loved to have a line in there about how this particular trope we're naming, in addition to everything else we've said, casts aspersions on pot smoking, which is, how dare they? How dare he do that? But this was my actual favorite piece, and I think I have not properly credited Ishmael Reed, so I was glad to be reminded of this with this find. But as we said here, the national need to have these images so heavily in rotation for the sanity of white America is demonstrated in the distribution promotion of Perry's movies. And I know this relationship has changed. He's no longer with Lionsgate, if I'm correct. But anyway, the Mantan Manifesto returns once again as an industry playbook. As Ishmael Reed has identified, the executives at Lionsgate Films, a studio that since 2005 has held a top 10 market share, snatched Precious coming out of the Sundance Film Festival and determined it suitable for their newly emerging niche market, black films for white audiences. A la MGM and Birth of a Nation, the modern-day minstrelsy became a centerpiece for that company's ascendancy. In fact, as Reed explains, Sarah Greenberg, speaking for Lionsgate, said that the movie would provide the studio with a goldmine of opportunity, which is probably true since the image of the black male as a sexual predator has created a profit center for over 100 years and even won elections for politicians like Bush the First, said Reed. Indeed, Reed explains the need to serve the dialectic of subordinate superordinate is in his investigation of the film studio's preference for the marketing of one form of blackness over another. White audience reaction to the test screening of Push, the original name for Precious, convinced some business executives that although there may not be a white audience for films depicting cerebral blacks, as in The Great Debaters starring Denzel Washington, or heroic blacks, as in Spike Lee's Miracle at St. Anna, there was a white audience for a movie in which blacks are shown as incestors and pedophiles. The popular reception of Precious proved Lionsgate's co-presidents for theatrical marketing, Sarah Greenberg and Tim Palin, to be correct in their prediction that Precious represented a, quote, goldmine of opportunity, end quote. So that was actually my favorite part of the chapter, and that I've always liked the most, that this was as close to an admission among the ruling elite that, yeah, black people, you might happen to like the film starring your favorite whoever, whatever, but that's not the point. That's not why the film got made. That's not why we dragged Tyler Perry off the theater stage in black communities and put him on the big screen for all the world. It's because white audiences want to see that. And then when you get into some of the detail we got into this chapter, but rereading it, I would have, now I wish we had done more. Because in preparing for that chapter, there was so much that had gone on that probably for word count, I don't know what the decision making was that many years ago, but and something maybe should be revisited, and I'm sure it's been written about elsewhere. But the original, so for instance, why was Tyler Perry given For Colored Girls, and why was it taken away from the black woman screenwriter who was originally assigned to it? Why did he add characters that didn't exist in the book or the play? Things like that. Before you even get into all the complexion favorings and all the other kinds of stories and the women, the drag traditions, which we do talk a little bit about in the chapter. But before all of that, all the things that go on that went in behind the scenes to him being placed where he was placed, are worthy of so much more attention than we gave in that chapter, for sure. I don't know to what extent it's actually been covered elsewhere. But the point being, as we did cover there, that the goal was to satisfy the niche market, as they described, of white audiences looking for black films. And even look at the films they said. The Great Debaters was too much for whites. By no means some revolutionary film, but just seeing black kids intelligent and beating white kids in a debate that we don't. And The Miracle of St. Anna, which I actually liked, Spike Lee's film. Again, no revolutionary film. It's not some politically revolutionary film, although it does start with a white man getting shot in the face, which is, but which is horrible and violent. But it's by no means a politically radical film. And even that, but that they're saying we can't take that. So to me, that's my favorite part of the chapter. It's because I love it when I feel like I can in some way help. This is just what they're saying. This doesn't mean I don't have to speculate. This doesn't mean, we don't have to, guess. They're saying white people do not want to see cerebral black films like The Great Debaters and The Miracle of St. Anna. So yes, again, I think what Tyler Perry's accused of is terrible. I don't think anybody should be abused in any form, fashion, on any whatever workplace or anywhere else for that matter. I also don't want to lose sight of the fact that Tyler Perry and people like him have been positioned to be much bigger problems for much longer time and are still there. So, all right, good people. Wrapped up just under 2 hours. Thank you all very much. Are there any pressing comments, questions, queries, conundrums, catechisms, cacophony, calumny, consternation? I will add all these links to the show description, probably make some timestamps, probably make some clips. Who knows? Who knows? I do appreciate you all coming through. Please like, share, subscribe, support the platform. And again, I can't imagine that anybody here would be in this situation, but please also make sure you are signed up over on Black Liberation Media as well. And by the way, where I'll say again, tomorrow morning we have a special edition of the Remix, special to me at least, of the Remix Morning Show on Black Liberation Media, 8 a.m. sharp Eastern Time. And oh, wow. I've never seen a Tyler Perry film. My Vernon philosophy has been in full effect. Being subjected to the advertisement was enough for me. Yeah. They were bad. And I must have watched, I don't even know how many had been made by 20. The chapter was published in 2013. I think we probably submitted it in 2012. How many films had he put out by then? It was a number of them. And I watched them all. Because if you're gonna, and I've watched a couple of his, I even saw one or two of his plays on tape, if I remember correctly. And then there was man, it was a lot of Tyler Perry for a couple months, and it was bad. It was bad. Like, it's not even like these were good movies that were entertaining. Even it wasn't like it was one of those things where you're watching something politically backwards, but it's funny or it's kind of good. It wasn't even like that. They were just bad all the way around. And they even brought in Jill Scott, which I remember being pained by. It was so ugh. Oh, you do like his plays. Okay. And again, I'm not, so that's, and yeah, as a play in the Black community, great. The plays were bad, but fun. So that's okay. So that's, yeah, the movies were just bad. Perfectly said. That's exactly my point. That's exactly it. Exactly it. Oh, you did like this? I didn't like it. But all right. But again, but again, remember what my point really is though. Liking it is irrelevant. And if you like it, you should be more critical of how it got there. But my point is, even if they happen to have been great films on some level, like not politically, but something that we really enjoyed or that could be, more widely appreciated. It's kind of like what I was saying before about methodology. The methodology that led to them being known to us in the first place is the problem. And I don't know. All right, well, there's more Tyler Perry fans in here than I realized. Okay, my bad. I don't, Yeah, politically, all the movies are awful. All right, I guess that's it. So listen, do all the things. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate you. If you are around on New Year's Eve, we're going, like I used to tell my homeboys, you could stop by here on your way to the club. I'm not going to the club anymore, but you can stop by here on your way. We can, sit, boop, 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 and then you can dip. That's how I'm looking at New Year's Eve. Please, Black Liberation Media tomorrow morning, Remix Morning Show, and all week. Make sure you have the bell rung over there as well. Here too, please. And well, whatever I'm forgetting, we'll come back to another time. Hey, but thanks everybody. Peace, only if you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say. And I'll catch you next time here with more.
And what did you sacrifice? Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.